Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Beyond the Method podcast. Today in the podcast, I'll be having Elliot Terral, which I am very excited about since I love his podcast, Magical Thinking. If you haven't seen it, definitely go check it out. In the podcast today, we'll be looking at, of course, ways beyond the method. We're talking a lot about magic with a K, and about the symbolical meaning of magic and how to use symbology and these kind of studies to enhance magic. Different ways of performing magic, different frames and contexts, and in general, just a lot of fun. I can say many more words, but they're not really going to mean anything. They're just a tool, as Elliot would like to say, just like belief. So let's get into the episodes, and I hope you're going to have a lot of fun. See you guys around. Sweet. All right, Elliot. So welcome to the podcast. Very happy
Thank
to
you
have
for
you here.
having me. Yeah.
So, like I mentioned earlier, also when we were talking a bit before this, I am really happy to have you here because your podcast was the first one I really enjoyed listening to, and probably the
Thank
first
you.
magic podcast I ever listened to. But I also remember like seeing those videos of you, like of you and Ricky, like discussing like certain magic books, and those were coincidentally also the same magic books I bought as my first magic books.
Amazing.
So
Yeah, great minds think alike.
So that was super cool because it was like going through these Vernon inner secrets, and then I could see you guys talking about the changes. Like, oh, I should look back at that thing.
There's such a wealth of knowledge, and I like my magic shelf is right over here behind me, and I just recently went back and grabbed one of the Verna Chronicles books and flipped it open and went, "Oh, this is cool. I don't remember this. Let me look at this and do this." And it's some of it's a little antiquated, but like that's beautiful. It's that it's
Mm.
of that time, and you go, "Oh, well, I'm not gonna do it like that," which is sort of how I've always approached learning magic. But that's a neat idea, or this is a nifty principle that I hadn't considered before. Let me mess around with this and figure out how I can do that for myself, which is fun.
So then, when you're approaching like learning magic, are you more like searching for inspiration when you're reading the book?
Um, oh man, this is when I'm reading a book, I would never say I'm learning magic. I would say like I'm looking for the magic that calls to me, and then I'll
Mm-hmm.
sort of collaborate with it a little bit. Um, and again, that I said earlier that the way that I do things, I think, is sometimes to my detriment. So like I don't have a storehouse of 1,000 tricks that I know and can do, and uh, so that's sort of, I don't know, for me, maybe a little disappointing every once in a while when I'm like, "Oh, you've seen all the tricks I do. What am I going to do now?" Um, but sort of the benefit I think is that the tricks that I do perform, they're either like pieces that my friends created and developed, and then I've put my spin on, or they're old pieces that like I don't really even know who they originally belonged to anymore. And they've just become such a part of who I am that I don't really even think about it. But when I'm reading books or looking for material, it's a vibe thing. I'm checking like,
Okay.
does this approach resonate with me? Is there a move in here that I think is neat or cool or that I think fits my hands or my style? Is there a presentational hook? Like I'm a cherry picker. I go in and I'm just, I'm looking for scrap. What's this part that I
Mm-hmm.
can take and this part that I can take and this part that I can take and cobble together into something, and I don't think this is original or revolutionary, but for me, like even as a kid, I was reading and going, I'm never going to do this. This is not, I don't like this. This is stupid. That doesn't seem natural. And maybe that was something too early on, is that like growing up in a place without really any serious close-up magicians, I didn't have any bad local influences. And so all I was getting was Ricky Smith and Dan and Dave and Tony Chang and, like Danny Garcia. I was getting these like very high level thinkers and sleight of hand technicians. And so I just thought that's just what it was. I didn't know that it wasn't that for the most part.
The
And so,
disappointment.
you know, God, it was a disappointment, but it was also It felt very exciting because I like went to the magic convention and was doing things people couldn't do and thought, "Oh, wow, this is exciting." And that's
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, I sort of got to live my life because of that. But anyway, um, I had these influences that were so good, and they all pointed to Divernon. And Divernon's thing was be natural. And so like that for me was the Sphinx's riddle. Like what does be natural mean? And I think part of the point of like being a good magician is figuring out what be natural means for you. I think in a lot of ways, or at least how I've heard it discussed, Vernon was talking about you should mimic what lay people do, or
Mm-hmm.
you should, there shouldn't be any tension. And I think that those are both good avenues of approach. But I think that if we build our worldview inside of that frame, then we're limited artistically in a lot of ways. Um, and I was limited artistically in a lot of ways as a young person. So it's also one of those great maxims where you learn the rules such that you can break them in the future intelligently.
Mm.
So it was coffee and books with Ricky was a great learning. I'm sorry, not coffee, Scotch and books with Ricky book club was a great way to sort of wax poetic about the old masters that I never got to
Mm.
meet and that Ricky got to see and study with a little bit maybe. And uh just all of that soup of information and material just became like this cherry picking plucking ground. And I was just looking for stuff that felt like it was going to be I've lived my life very intuitively. And so like it just I thought, oh, this feels good. This feels like something interesting. This feels like something that is calling to me. I'm just trying to read between the lines, listen between the lines, and just find the parts that feel like they're supposed to be with me.
I also feel like when people say be natural, like people are always talking like technique wise, right? Like we're always saying be natural, so your handling should look natural. But I think one thing that Vernon, like sort of if you read between the lines, also discusses is like the personality wise be natural. Because some people just have like a shift, like they do something and like, oh, they're gonna do magic because like their personality is like 180 degrees different. And you go, what happened to you?
Yeah.
Where I feel like Vernon has this thing which Giancarlo Scalia, for example, also has. Like with Giancarlo, you're never really sure if he's gonna do a trick or whether he's just talking with you.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's another part that Vernon was talking about. Like your manner of being should be consistent in that sense, so that it doesn't give away anything.
Yeah, I sort of relate to that as like I'm a magician all the time.
Mm.
Like we were talking before we started recording about like you're always performing. And are
Yes.
you choosing what you're performing, right?
Mm.
So I'm always a magician. The way that I talk is the same when I'm doing a trick and when I'm not doing a trick. I'm a big proponent of like doing magic without the frame. So like,
What does that mean
that
exactly?
well, like what you just said is people shift into performance mode, right? Or their cadence changes or their voice changes or
Mm.
their entire identity shifts downward into their hands, Um I'm a big fan of performing without the frame, meaning you
Mm.
don't know if or when the trick has started,
Right.
because I think that allows for so much more breathability, which allows for so much more natural communication.
Mm.
And so if I talk like this all the time, and not just because we're recording, then you don't know if it's patter or it's presentation or it's just conversation or, you know, and the other thing too is that like, part of being natural for me was about being the lack of tension, meaning effortless, meaning like subtle. And so I really engage
Mm.
in the subtlety of movement and performance. And I was just at Buffalo 52 a couple weeks ago, and
Nice.
Garrett Thomas was talking about, um, the way that he shifts his attention. He describes it like it's lighting. He's like shifting the lighting of whatever he's doing to
Mm.
help draw the eye. And I think that that's a really beautiful way of describing it. And I sort of I approach it in a similar way, but I'm maybe less spotlight and a little more like, oh, let's just, change the mood slightly.
Mm.
Um, and I think that you can do that with a lot of subtlety that really catches people off guard. Like yesterday, I was walking around the city with a friend, and he's a newer friend, and so he's never really seen me do any magic. And we were in a hooey crystal shop, and we were just walking around and pointing at tarot books and talking about things we had read. And he, there was a big table of, you know, rocks and crystals and things, and there's a little quartz marble, and I picked it up and held it in my hand and just kind of looked at it, and then did a ball vanish, but like a ball vanish as I was putting it back in the tray. So it was like, I wasn't performing for him. This is just who I am and what I do, and it just, I've done the cups and balls thousands of times, so that's just part of how I handle stuff. And I didn't tell him I was going to do it. I wasn't performing, but like I could hear and feel and see him over here just sort of observing me in my natural habitat. And then like, I make it vanish and he's like, oh God. I'm like, oh, what? And he goes, I don't know how you did that. I was like, oh, yeah, I don't know. It makes it hard not to steal stuff because I can make it disappear. But exercise our will responsibly. But it's that kind of without the frame is what I'm talking about. It's like, another thing is performing for people on the subway. Like, I'm not looking at them and going, hey, do you want to see a trick? But like, when I'm practicing the move, I'm doing it at the angle so that it fools them every time,
Mm.
Those little things where that to me feels so much more magical than come to my theatrical show you didn't buy a ticket for and didn't ask to see, you know?
Do
It
you
feels more like I'm a wizard in the wild and people are like, what did I just see? What just happened?
yeah, like it's more effortless in some way.
Yeah. But that also leads to me not getting paid for stuff. So,
Yeah, that
to
was
each
that was
their
what I was
own.
about to ask. Like, not necessarily about getting paid, but like, do you think, like, let's say you're doing like a walk around gig, or like you're doing like a parlor show, then do you think that would be possible without a frame? Like, in some way, no, of course, because we're already in the show, which is framed.
Right. The show is the frame. The theater is the frame.
Mm.
The seat is the frame. Buying the ticket is the frame. But then it's now just a matter of like choosing, the context has to be coherent. So for me, and again, I'm not a professional performer. The last time I did a walk around gig was I think I was in college. And the last time I did any kind of formal performance was like 2 years ago, and it was in a living room for maybe 40 people. So this is not a theatrical kind of point of view. And any professionals listening to me, very little of what I say may be applicable. So for that, I apologize for my navel gazing. But anyway, um, the well, anyway, I'm not going to say what I was going to say. But so for the framing in a context where like you are center stage, okay, whether that's in the middle of a living room and you're performing in the round, or you're busking or whatever, there's still, I think, you have the ability to faint when the trick starts. So
Mm.
um when I sort of got out of magic in 2018 and like was very burned out and just moved and shifted careers, I really didn't touch a deck of cards for a long time or coins or anything. And coming back to it without having the rote sleight of hand technique was really interesting and helpful because I wasn't automatically performing sleights. I was much more intentional about, okay, how am I going to handle things now? Because I
Mm.
have this new perspective, this new understanding, this new way of being with people that, now it's much more flow based than framed sleight of hand, burn my hands and it's going to be
Right.
effortless. Now it's like, I'd much rather do the dirty work off camera and
Mm.
then light the thing and then make the color change happen instead of like, here, I'm going to turn it over and you get to watch all the mechanics and look how pretty it is. Which, I love that too. Don't get me wrong. But now I'd rather just palm the card and sit there for a couple minutes and then in the moment, bang, it's done. I don't do the slap thing, but that's the impact I'm going for is like the percussive boom, when did that happen? How did that happen? As opposed to, what's about to happen. It's going to come up. Here we go. Here's a little build up. Okay, are you ready? Okay, now we're going to go. That to me is a little more hand-holdy, and I'd rather just get in, get out, methodologically speaking.
Yeah, yeah.
And as you can probably tell in the conversation, I like to talk a lot. So that's another maybe detriment to the way that I perform magic, is that because I'm sort of intuitive and I'm trying to be as present in the moment as possible,
Mm.
I can become a little long-winded because I'm sort of talking to people in the audience as I'm and I'm like, I want to talk to this person. I want to talk to this person. And now it's like, okay, are you going to do any magic? So, you know, we're all doing the best that we can, and we all have ways that we can learn. And as long as we're observing ourselves and trying to get better every time, that's what it's all about.
I fully agree. Like, it's also interesting because one of my friends, Mark Elston, like he doesn't have to live fully off performing magic, which really helps him. So his approach also to performing like professionally is if he gets a gig which is classically titled like walk around, he will be saying, okay, he'll get all his payment out of the way, and he's like, okay, I'm going to be invited as a guest. I'm not going to be invited as a performer. I'm going to be a guest. I'll still do amazing things. I'll blow all your guests away. But he wants to be invited as a guest. And he's just there drinking with them and talking with them and having fun. And as he's talking with them, like he's weaving them into a sort of a magic trick, which feels casual, right? And then something happens, which I kind of
That takes
like.
a lot of confidence too, because, I think a lot of people rely on the crutch of, I'm being paid to be here, so you have to pay attention to me. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Sorry, I interrupted you, but you also cut out, and so I don't know what happened.
No, but like on that regard, like to looking at the way you approach performing, like I think it has a lot of potential in itself as well. But it also deals with the challenge that like yeah, like you say, like it's gonna be difficult to say, I'm gonna do like 60 people like walk around magic in an hour or 50 or 40 because well, it might be really nice. You might spend 20 minutes there, and with the other people, you might be like, I'm gonna get the fuck out of here.
Yeah. Yeah. And the walk around gigs that I've done, I was so young and hadn't really cut my teeth that I didn't have the confidence to like work a crowd. Now I think it
Mm.
would be a very different scenario. But that just has to do so much with my own comfortability with myself and my person. And I just have, you know, I don't know. It doesn't sound very humble to say, but as a magician, you're typically one of the more interesting people in the room.
Yeah,
And
that's true.
so like I think now I'm a lot more comfortable with that, and that I also tried to cultivate an interesting everything that I feel pretty confident walking up and talking to someone because I'm confident in myself and I can just be present with them. I feel like I
Mm.
have the interpersonal tools to be able to hold whatever they bring me. So, that's that I think is what we're supposed to learn in magic, and instead we learn the Elmsley count,
Yeah.
you know? So, not that they're mutually exclusive, but I think that people get lost in the forest for the trees.
No, but you're so dead on the money with that. Like I have noticed also like the more gigs I do, the more it's about communication. Just a simple peek in a palm can get such a huge response. As long as your communication to the audience is good and it's honest and it's just open and you're like you say, you're lighting the spotlight on the right things as opposed to boom, boom, pass this, just this, do. You might still go, what? But it's different than if you're like really just like communicating with them and just talking to them as a person.
Well, it's the
And
difference between, like, "Look at my toys," and "I'm a wizard." You know? Like,
yes,
both of those perspectives, you're carrying a bunch of weird shit around in a bag. But
yeah.
in one of them, it's like show and tell, and in the other one, people are like, "What? Ooh," And I'm more interested in the second one than the first one these days.
No, for sure. And it is kind of true and also weird to realize what you're saying in the sense of like you are one of the most or more interesting people at a party, like always. But then I feel like I'm hanging out with so many people that are like that, that are like interested in like music and tarot and like psychology and magic, and that actually, if they have a day job, when they go home, they keep studying and learning things.
Yes.
where I feel like 80% of the people out there are just like, they go home, they watch television, and they go to bed. Nothing wrong with that, but it's kind of difficult to realize that, like, if you're not doing that, you will quickly become the most interesting person.
Right.
But you will also attract those people, right? So, like, perspectively for yourself, you're like, oh,
You
this
don't
is
ever
normal.
feel like the most interesting person, but, like, most of the time when you're not around your friends, you are the most interesting person, but, like, your friends and heroes and mentors are all way more interesting than you are, so you think.
But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we're trapped in our own weird, like, paradoxical cube in the same way that other people are trapped in the societal game cube, you know what I
Yes.
mean? And, if it the basically the thing that I was burned out about in Magic was I really wanted to understand. It was a spiritual deficiency, truly, because I wanted the universal truth. I wanted, like, what is it that we're doing here? What is the humanity connection? Like, what is the point of a magic trick?
Mm,
You know? Like, we have such a profoundly powerful tool. What is the point? And I feel like that sort of came across in my podcast, was like trying to get to the bottom of that question. And I have found my own answer to that question that helps me live my life and sleep at night and things like that. And um but I think it's important that each person finds their own answer to it, but you have to start with asking the question, which is about dissatisfaction as much as it is about the fun and joy that it brings. Um but I think that that's the role of the artist as much as the magician, because art and magic are the same.
mm.
As someone who used to go, "Is art magic? Is magic an art?" And now I'm like, "It's the only art, buddy."
I've wasted so many hours with that conversation.
I know. Yeah. I mean, once you broaden up your thinking and get out of the magic bubble of, there, yeah, it's just, nobody said to me, "You've got it upside down."
Mm,
You know, that was the issue that I had, is that I thought conjuring was magic, and I thought that magic wasn't real. When in reality, magic is real, and all the lay people know it. And we're the
mm.
ones standing up going, "Haha, you're idiots, and I'm the smart one that knows that magic isn't real." And it's like, maybe check yourself.
Maybe it's the other way around.
Yeah, maybe it's the other way around.
But, like, so with your dissatisfaction with magic, like, how much of it did have to do with magic itself, and how much of that had to do with you projecting something from yourself onto magic?
Both and I think they're inextricable from one another. I
Mm,
think it had a lot to do with uh the 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 culture of the community was very, like, uh capitalistic. Just from a perspective of, like, and especially in LA too, but
mm,
in a perspective of, like, what are you doing? Who are you meeting? How much money are you making? How are you climbing the ladder? And I
so it's
have
a
never.
dick measuring contest, essentially.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Who
Okay.
who can perform the biggest dick? Uh, it's funny. Some names popped into my head when I said that. Uh, but the yeah, so that was not satisfying to me, because, again,
Mm,
I could feel the immense power of this great and grand thing, and I was also projecting on, like, being obsessed with King Arthur and Merlin as a little kid, and, like, wizards,
mm,
and all of that stuff is in my youth. Uh, that I wasn't ever finding. Speaking of which, my dream as a kid was to walk into a magic store and walk out with the secrets of the universe. And
mm,
that doesn't happen. But I was just in Burbank, fitting a doctor client of mine, and I went to the Magic Apple, which is the Los Angeles magic store. And I went in there on a whim. I heard the thought in my head, "You should go to the Magic Apple." And then my response to that thought was, "No." Uh, but I did it anyway, because I'm trying to trust when things like that come up and come out, and I did. And it was great. Michael Carbonaro was in there, and Joel Ward was in there, and Tony Clark was in there, and Brent, who runs the shop, which was wonderful. And it was nice to say hi and talk to them for a little bit. And then as I was getting ready to leave, in the little $5 bin on the counter, I look and there's a book that is Visionary Enochian Magic. Magic with a K. And I picked it up and I went, Brent, what are you doing with this? And he goes, I got it in an estate sale. And I said, I'm going to take this before you confuse a teenager. He goes, it's on me. But that, that was sort of like a little synchronicity, to me, one of the ways that magic shows up as real is like, I had this thought, go to the magic apple, I go, and then the thing that I've wanted my whole life, which is to walk out with the secrets of the universe, there's that book right there, and I walk out, and that's just fun. That's just fun to me. Like, and when I say that, I'm talking symbolically, like the secrets of the universe. I don't
Of course.
proclaim to believe any of the things that I say, because belief is a tool, just like anything else. But like an embodied imaginal experience that helps you feel good and fun and powerful and like a wizard, I think makes you a better magician. So that's sort of how I'm interacting with life, because why not? I'm not hurting anybody. So I like that kind of approach. Anyway, I got sidetracked in that story, but being a
Oh,
little kid
please.
and being interested in wizardry and magic and stuff, that like I was definitely projecting onto magic, to get back to your question. I was definitely projecting onto magic. Like, we have this big, powerful tool. What are we doing other than getting applause? And, I would sit in the Magic Castle library and look through books, and the books that I was interested in didn't have those answers, because the books that I was interested in were about sleight of hand, not about philosophy. And
Right.
so it took getting out of magic and studying philosophy and art on a broader sense, rather than just the technique and the artistic criticism of it, to start, approaching meaning in that way.
Yeah, I mean, like for what you were searching for, like probably Jung or Elliot will get you much closer to any of that
And I
than
got both of them
Vernon.
on the bookshelf.
Nice.
Yeah, the Young Red book is right there. The Young Tarot is right there behind it. Elliot is over here, and I've got the
Which
Shamanism
one?
book and the Sacred and Profane and the Rites and whatever. Yeah, it's all good.
Rituals and Rites, I think. Something. Yeah.
Rituals and Rites, yeah.
They're such profound, beautiful books to read, and I don't know why, but like I always had this sense of like, okay, if I want to learn more about magic, but like deeper, like into the depth, I have to read these books as opposed to sleight of hand books. But then that can
Yeah.
also drive you sort of crazy, right? Because you're like thinking like, how do I create like a liminal space with a magic
What?
performance?
Okay, but that's what Tamara's 5 points of magic is. Right? He's talking
Yeah.
about the magical atmosphere is that liminal space. And when you
Yeah.
read shamanism and you understand that, like, the shamans did sleight of hand at the beginning to create the magical atmosphere, and everybody knew it wasn't real, but they
Yes.
were suspending their disbelief to get into the feeling. And then you would have the, like, either the drug induced whatever, but you would you would all together create an agreement that you were going to have a spiritual experience together.
Yeah.
And then the shaman, the tuning fork, the resonating of the person regulating the culture, would then go on to do these insane things, or speak in these insane, like the gift of tongues is speaking gibberish, but everybody hears what they need to hear, right? Because you tap into the subconscious. Anyway, so there's like all of this really amazing, profound consciousness manipulation technique, but it's all above board in shamanism, or at least not always and not in every case, but like generally there was an understanding that this person was special, and that some of it involved trickery, and that many of the gods throughout many of the different varying religions and traditions are trickster gods, right? It's not,
Yes.
we're like, we think the trickster means the charlatan, but in reality, it is the person who creates the liminal atmosphere where you don't know what is or isn't real, and such you free yourself from the chains of logic and rationality in order to get into the subconscious and have a more meaningful experience.
Yeah, and I mean it's exactly like you say. Like what people forget is that a big part of the hermit is also the trickster archetype. And the hermit will very often, like the wise man, in all the stories, will very often do trick you into doing certain things, into certain scenarios, for you to actually do something or experience something which will in the end be transformative, which will
Yes.
get you to that better space. So when we're saying that it's a trick, it's not always like negative, right? It can also be
Well, the trickster, like you were just saying, is
Mm-hmm.
creates a transformative experience, and so very often a trickster is a shapeshifter. He's
Mm-hmm.
someone who literally transforms himself in order to give you a transformative experience,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so, one of the things that I think is also often left out of conversations around magic in the magic community is that real magic is symbolic. Like,
Mm-hmm.
that it is symbolic doesn't mean that it isn't real. Just because it isn't tangible and we can't measure it in a particular way doesn't mean we can't observe the effects of it and get consistent results. Okay. So, like, what were we just talking about? I lost the thread. I'm so sorry.
That's all right. We were we were talking about the trickster archetype.
Trickster archetype, the fact that in magic community, what's left out is that it's symbolic. Oh, there's just like an element of like analytical comprehension that we've lost. That we have, we turned skepticism into spectacle and lost all the meaning along the way.
Yeah. No, that's perfect. The way you say it.
And we look at the zeitgeist and like magic is more popular than it's ever been, but so is Hui. Right. So is all the oh, that's what I was going to say. I was going to come back to astrology. Like astrology has to do with the 7 natural planets, and the 7 natural planets are blah, blah, blah. And Mercury is the ruling planet of both the Magician tarot card and the Hermit tarot card. And Mercury in the alchemical path relates to thought. And so once you start reading into the symbology, once you start understanding and studying the ways that things correspond to one another over time, because it's just our attempt at speaking to the ineffable, which is what magic is, right? So like none of it is real, but all of it is true in one way or another, right? And so like if you can just let go of the very tight grip that you might have on what you think magic is, and just open up a little bit to what it might mean to other people sometimes, then you're allowing for the transformation to occur. Then you are trusting that there is maybe more to experience, more to learn, and that you're not the end all be all like you thought you were on stage, and that you've been telling people you are on stage. Like, and this is a lot of this thinking started with Alan Moore for me. And I think with Alan Moore, like he makes the point that if you could write and you could send a message, you take the paper to someone on the other side of the field or on the other side of the valley, and they could read the message, you just cast your thoughts at a distance, right? To people who can't read, that's magic. And so just because our technology has gotten more advanced doesn't mean that it isn't still magic.
True. Yeah.
And I think that's what we've lost, is that people think that they're mutually exclusive from one another, when in reality, we're just understanding magic more deeply. And yet there's still so much more mystery to be had. And to be had, I don't even like that phrasing because that feels predatory. There's so much more mystery to appreciate and to be grateful for and to find meaning with and to collaborate with and to, bring people. Oh, I was talking about the zeitgeist. People are interested in magic and they're interested in the hooey stuff, right? And it's because we're looking for some kind of spiritual buoyant, because we don't have it. Everything has been taken away from us and we're just being fed advertising all the time. And I'm speaking from an American Western perspective, but like, yikes, we're losing community for isolationism. We're losing safety and security and love and compassion for fashion nova skin tight suits. Yeah, just, nonsense, just absolute gutter nonsense that is ruining the planet. And anyway, I don't want to get into all that, but
but
people are looking for help. And for me, being a magician who's interested in this sort of stuff, like, and I want to be very clear, like, this goes back to what I was saying earlier about I can regulate myself and I can hold what people bring to me. If you do not have those skills, you should not touch this kind of presentation. Because that is the charlatanism that people take advantage of. That is the charlatanism that gives all of it a bad name. But if you are someone who can be with people and can provide safety and comfort because you are safe and comfortable, then this kind of, I think, almost like the magician archetype is the conduit above and below, right? So we exist, not only do we create the liminal space, we exist in the liminal space. And so, like, you need to be able to take responsibility for what happens in that liminal space if that's the role you're going to play. And if you can't, then you still have work to be done, right? But I'm interested in that. I'm interested in that, like, community building, safety, love, compassion, inspiration, collaboration. How do we make the world a better place one day at a time together, like, and starting with our world? And how does that bleed out and ripple effect over time and over relationships, you know? Because that's what the wizard does, is he plants the seeds and changes history. Anyway, so small goals.
Small goals just change the world, you know.
Just change the
easy.
world.
Easy
Listen, I
peasy.
mean, okay, it's like, right, it's cute, but I've had multiple people say your podcast X, Y, and Z to me. I had an impact around the globe with the thing that I was just fumbling around with, and now I'm trying to more actively take responsibility for the impact that I can have, and that any of us can have, and I'm trying to empower people to look at the impact that they can have and to take responsibility for the impact that they can have, and to be mindful and conscious and awake in their choice making in regards to these things, because that's how things change. They don't change through anger. They don't change through reaction. They change through conscious, intentional choice toward.
It's true. Yeah. Like you're always casting a spell one way or another. You're always doing magic. It's either intentional or unintentional. But it's like those things, like drink Coke, or food tastes better with Coke. That's in itself, that's magic. But we're not so much aware of it.
Jared Koff has a great line in his act, which is, I don't even know if it's in his act. It's in his lecture, which is his act for magicians, which is, there are black magicians everywhere. Drink Coke. We can just tell them to do it, which is funny.
That's funny.
But yeah,
it's also funny in some way how, like, the person that is supposed to bring wonder is at the same time right now, like, looking at it as the magician, the one that's the most removed from wonder of all people. Because I feel like within the magic world we have a really big tradition of skepticism, where we're going like, all of this stuff is fake, and I'm not gonna say that tarot cards are real or they're fake, or that we really have psychics or don't have psychics. But one thing that we are seeing is that just because there are a few charlatans out there who are going on stage and charging you a shit ton of money in order to talk to your dead grandma, we're saying, nope, all of that shit is fake. None of it is real, it doesn't exist. While at the same time, we are like the person that's supposed to bring wonder to the world, and we're supposed to understand wonder symbolically and also understand transformation. Yet we are the one that is deeming everything to be fake, and even what we are providing to people is fake in some way because we're using sleight of hand.
Right.
Which, like, I'm still like also trying to find the balance in that. Like there is a value.
People think that if it isn't impossible, if you're not doing the impossible for real, then it's fake. But magic isn't about the impossible. If it were impossible, it would be impossible.
Yes.
Magic is about the result. Magic is about not only just the feeling of wonder. Fucking who cares? Who cares? The feeling of wonder is a tool. It is a tool for breaking people's brains open and breaking people's hearts open and then filling it with love or a new perspective, right?
Mm-hmm.
That is the point of the wonder and the awe. These words are related to religious and spiritual experience. And religious and spiritual experience are what change people's core relation to the world. And so we are the people who are taking this profound experience that is heart opening and brain opening and making it about getting applause or getting reactions. It's the most selfish. I never really understood on a deep level what people meant when they would say your magic is masturbatory. All conjuring is masturbatory. It just is. Now, starting from that point, what are you going to do about it? Right? Is it now are we getting into something that is interrelational? Now are we getting into something that is meaningful, that makes your life better, that changes the way that you think about things? Or is it just a silly card trick? And by the way, there's room for both. And in fact, thinking this way freed me up to enjoy silly card tricks and to be excited about silly card tricks, because now they're silly card tricks and they don't need to be the magic, because I don't need a prop to do the magic. I can just sit with someone and be with them and give them safety and give them love and restore a little bit of their hope and humanity. And that's magic. That's the transformation. Anyway,
I love that.
it's so
It's
simple.
also
They're in the computer.
no, but it's like a big part of that is also we are talking always so much about, oh yeah, if you do this or that, your audience will respond in way X, Y, or Z, where we're almost trying to manipulate people into doing certain things, which at the end of the day, you could say like, oh yeah, but if I'm manipulating them into enjoying themselves, then that's a good thing. But that's also masturbatory because, well, why do you want them to enjoy themselves? Because your ego
Are they
wants to
enjoying
say.
themselves or are they enjoying you?
Exactly.
Right? Like enjoying themselves is that's a mitzvah. That's a good thing. You want people to enjoy themselves. If more people enjoyed
Yes,
themselves, there'd be a lot less negativity in the world.
exactly.
Sorry, I've steamrolled you
No,
on
no,
that. Please continue.
no, that's all right. But I think magic is more about open. And what's going on with this? Okay, we're gonna stop it again. Let me see.
So if I'm
And
ever
that's
gonna
the real secret of magic.
exactly, and if I'm ever gonna write a book, I'll tell people how to not record a podcast like this, because then no one will know about the real secret of magic. I feel this is way too profound to share with people as well. So
Yeah, this is the universe preventing us from sharing the real. The universe is gatekeeping right now.
fucking universe, man, what a dick.
Hey, be careful.
Sure.
You're gonna regret that.
Yeah, at the same time, God just says yes, right? So here we go.
There you go.
But no, I feel like I was saying before we got cut off, like magicians just open up the door to the possibility of you enjoying wonder, but I don't think you can really force anybody to experience this.
Yeah. Well, I think that, and this is hard in a theatrical perspective, and I think about it a lot, even though I'm not a theatrical performer. I'm kind of always trying to put together the show. Because if I had the show, I would do the show. I just don't have the show. I'm still trying to figure out what the show is. But one of the things that I'm sort of stuck on right now is giving people the tools, right? And so how can you do that in a theatrical aspect? Well, you can present a piece of trickery in such a way that it gives someone a felt, lived body experience and practice of doing something that will be helpful to them in the future. For example, John Wilson has a coin bend where he takes the coin, puts the coin in your hand, and then you put a fear or an anxiety or whatever into the coin, and then it's bent, and then you take it and bury it or do whatever you're going to do with it. And I found that for me, I wanted to fill up the space where the fear was. So for me, I take the coin and I put it in their hand and I lead them through a guided visual meditation of how to put whatever this thing is that they're going to put in the coin. And my presentation, the bones, the structure's the same, but the presentation is person for person. It goes in, and then once they've put it in, then I have them point their awareness on the empty spot where that was. And then have them fill that with love or fill that with gratitude or whatever that's going to be. And then now that fills up their body, right? So the meditation isn't done when the thing is gone. The meditation is done when you're whole again. And then the hand opens and the coin is bent. And the moment of astonishment seals the lesson. The moment of astonishment is the stamp on the end of the practice that then hopefully the next time they have this feeling or this fear, they remember this new experience of, okay, if I take these deep breaths and I push this out and I get rid of it and I fill it back up with the joy and the love, right? So like they've gained this hopefully, potentially useful tool in their lives that they won't forget because a magician had a coin bend in their hand, right? It's not about the coin bending. I don't give a shit about that. What I care about is that they remember this moment and this technique. So I'm interested in like what techniques can you leave people with that are real techniques for consciousness manipulation, that are real techniques for transforming your experience of reality that I'm doing during the presentation of a magic trick where we're all having fun and it's all above board. We know this isn't real spiritual science. And at the same time, it kind of is real spiritual science. It is this consciousness shift. And I'm not suggesting that people are like healing themselves of like tumors and stuff in the show that I'm talking about. But giving people useful techniques, practical techniques that they can go and take out into the world, that to me feels cheeky and interesting and sexy. And like, that is calling to me, getting people embodied, getting people present, giving people control over their thoughts and feelings and experience when they would otherwise feel a lack of control, I think is an important and worthwhile goal.
I think along the way you'll make the world a bit of a better place when you're doing that as well.
One starfish at a time. You're familiar with that? Father and son are walking down the beach and there was a big storm and it washed all these starfish up onto the beach and, the sun is baking them and the son, little kid is walking and he bends over and picks up a starfish and throws it back in the water. And the dad goes, "You can't save all of them." And he goes, "No, but I can save this one and I can save this one and I can save this one."
Nice. Yeah, so like in that sense, like also the opening doors like metaphor works really well because you can say, well, I cannot give everyone a profound magical experience or even a psycho-magical experience, sort of what you're describing before, but some people will remember it and some people will appreciate it.
Yeah. And also, none of this is to say that having a great time and having your mind blown and like seeing the most amazing card trick or magic trick, whatever, that's all kick ass. And there is all the room in the world for that. And I am not trying to shit on that at all. I can curse, right? Is that okay?
Yeah, dude, curse all the fuck you want.
Okay. There's still room for that. And it's beautiful. And I think it's more necessary now than ever. And I'm a big proponent of just doing a fucking great trick. And also, like, for me, I want to be able, I want more than that. I outgrew just do a great trick. And now that's just one tool in the toolbox, hopefully, is a great trick. But I also want to have a trick that's maybe cute, but that they'll never forget. Or maybe they do forget the trick, but they don't forget the lesson. Like, to me, it's so much less about me now. I just don't give a shit what you think of the trick, what you think of me. Well, that's not true. I do care what you think of me. But like the point is you have to think well of me so that you can think well of the experience, so that the experience is meaningful and it carries you through whatever thing.
It's at the end that's all they will remember. It's how you made them feel. And what happened in the scenario. It's
also why that approach is very interesting. Like something that just hit me is I know some people that go like, oh, I don't want to do gigs anymore or walk around because I only want to focus on this meaningful mentalism kind of stuff. And you have people that go like, oh, all of that stuff is bullshit because I can never use that in any scenario.
Yeah.
But what just hit me is like, yeah, but if you learn all of that, like let's say you're interested in all of those things, then once the red moment hits you and you're present with someone, you can possibly be the factor or the catalyst for change.
Yes. I think, to your point, I think a lot of magicians miss the lessons of magic. Like what I said earlier is that like we're supposed to learn through this how to be in front of people in a stressful situation. But I think there are lots of lessons to be learned, like how to be diligent, how to practice, how to focus. Like there are lots of little lessons that we can apply to other parts of our life. But again, we're missing the forest for the trees. And so, like, to bring that back to what you just said about the tools in the toolbox, like for a long time, my preferred method of performing has been jazz, which is double lifts and top changes and controls and, just like using the tool that's appropriate for the moment. I know 30 different controls of a card to the top of the deck. I use 6 of them, but like I have a wealth of practical ability that allows me to be present and disengaged from the method while I'm performing. And so to your point, like if we can take that level, that approach to sleight of hand, which is prepared for any situation, and then we just apply that to another aspect of like, okay, how do I talk to someone? How do I be prepared for any conversation? How do I be prepared for any XYZ? We just use that same sort of approach. And now we can combine methods and be, that's what being a real wizard is like situation independent, always available for transformation.
Yes.
So
Yeah,
it's not either or, and the one helps the other.
And to that regard also, like once you learn how to master one thing, you will have the roadmap ready to master whatever you want to master.
Right. Yeah. And that's another great thing about magic is that like the learning happens in the doing. You have to perform for people to get better at being a magician. Like you see people with good technique, but it's clear they've only ever done it in front of their mirror. Like to get good, you have to do it for people. And so you have to start where you are and then look at where the roadmap leads and look at the landmark and study the landmark from a distance and then come back and do your best to approximate it. And then you look back and you sort of build a bridge toward the middle, right? From the master, the apprentice, you're building a bridge to the middle of understanding. And then once you're in the middle, you can orient wherever you want, choose whatever next landmark is, right? And so you're always approaching you're creating a web, right? And your technique is the node in the center, but you're creating a web of influence from where you're drawing your inspiration, not just in magic, but just like the great thinkers or the great poets or the great artists or the great this or that or the other thing. And, you're just constantly building your way toward the middle, but the middle keeps getting closer and closer to mastery because it's this kind of like, it's logarithmic tangent. I don't know. You know what I'm talking about. I'm not a math person. Anyway.
I know exactly what you're talking about. I have no clue how to call it.
Okay. But yeah, the limit does not exist. Essentially, you never hit the line, but you can always approach it from a new angle, from a new perspective, from a different. I don't know. It's all one thing thinking itself, and so if you get good at learning, you can get good at anything.
Have you experienced anything that you've learned in magic that helped you with tailoring, or the other way around?
Oh yeah. Oh my God. Both have been so helpful. What helped me in tailoring was fine motor skills and dexterity and attention to detail. So magic for me was always a highly sensual practice. Like, I can pick up cards and tell you, okay, that's 21 cards that I just cut off or whatever, like that kind of fine detail in my fingertips is very helpful for pinning. It's very helpful for sewing. And the attention to detail, like the ability to conceptualize in my mind 3-dimensionally, like I can imagine a space, I can imagine people next to me, I can imagine the interaction between us and the way that I might flirt or do this or that or the other thing, right? All of this mental rehearsal is very helpful for sales, like being able to be in front of people and to think ahead and meet their needs before they know they need them. Like there's just so many
Mm.
ways that you can be 1 or 2 or 3 ahead. And even when you're 1 behind, you still, you know how to get out from behind that, right? So
Yeah.
there are interpersonal things that are very helpful from magic. There's also, are we still recording? You just cut out again.
Yeah, we're still
We're good?
recording. I
Okay.
have no clue what's going on.
Okay. There are interpersonal things that are helpful, like I was saying. And then sort of on the flip side, it, okay, so like the magician exists in the liminal space. As a
Mm.
custom tailor, the majority of my clients are trying to transform.
Mm.
And I would say the majority of the majority are like, I'm helping them transition from being single to married,
Mm.
or from being a student to a graduate. Like there's a momentous occasion, and I'm the person that's helping them feel confident about the momentous occasion in their life. So
Mm.
I take that relationship and that gravity very seriously. This is something that they're never going to forget. So when I have a wedding client, I help them pick the color and the fabric and all the things for their suit and their details, but I'm asking questions like, who's your photographer? Let me see their work. I need to know how they're going to light your photos. I need to know what their editing style is so that I can pick a
Mm.
color that's going to look good in the venue, that's going to go with everything that you bought and planned for, that's going to look good after the photographer takes and edits the photos, because this is going to be one day and you're going to look immaculate, but these photos are going to exist for the rest of your life. These are going to be what
Mm.
the memory is over time. So it needs to look good here. And people go, oh my God, I didn't think of that. And so it's like, that's a way that I can be 1 ahead. That's a way that I can add value by being a magical thinker, is I'm thinking
Mm.
about the total coherent experience, not just, I'm going to make you a Navy suit because Navy is what everybody needs in their closet. And, like, look, who cares? I want to do magic for people. And so because I try to be a wizard, I'm doing magic, whatever we're doing. You're going to be better off for having interacted with me, hopefully. Either that's because you smiled or because you have a new way of appreciating something, you know?
Yeah, you're very much tailoring their experience in that moment.
Yes, absolutely. And tailoring the experience for the rest of their life. Because the other thing is, too, now that if they go get a custom suit anywhere else, they're fucked.
Like, yeah, but Elliot does this thing. And like, yeah, we're not Elliot. It's like, oh man,
Yeah.
why
Just,
not?
it is what it is.
But like, especially like in your business, but I feel also like a magician. Like any sort of, when you're a small business owner, that kind of eye to detail is very important. It's that one thing that will make people come back to you, and that will make them appreciate it even more. Like, because of course they could go to suit supplier to any other place and get like a decent to good suit, or get something from Paul Smith, who has beautiful material for suits. But at the same time, you won't be getting what you are offering them.
Yeah.
But
I
thinking
mean,
with them and making it for the scenario that they're buying it for.
yeah, I'm not a money motivated person. And so, again, to my detriment. Uh, and so for me, it really is about like, and I think this also comes from a lifetime of feeling like an imposter, which is like, I need to over deliver on this thing. And so it is really important to me. I do think about the whole experience from not only from start to finish, but like, what's the memory going to be? I'm building a mythology constantly, right? Like as a magician, they're going to remember something different than what I did. So how am I influencing the story that they're going to remember, not just what actually happened, right? And so that's what I'm thinking about constantly is how does my interacting with this person's consciousness improve their life? Because the story that they're going to have about it is going to be a good one forever. Yeah, and hopefully we'll only get better over time, right? Like a good magic trick. This is a small little tangent, but it's an interesting one, I think. When I was like maybe senior in high school, freshman in college, something like that, in downtown Monroe, Louisiana, which is where I'm from, there's a guy there named Brad Arender, and he had an art gallery, and he's one of the people in downtown that started this art crawl. So they would do twice a year, have an art crawl, and all the little, tiny little art galleries in this little podunk town would have like a big event, and people would come down to downtown and go through and do the art experience and all that. And they did that for, I think, 12 years. And maybe my freshman or sophomore year in college, now that I'm thinking about it, we did a Dan and Dave playing card, uncut sheet framed exhibit at his gallery. And I performed it. And and I did one trick the whole night. I did one trick. And he said that to this day, that this was almost 20 years ago. He said that to this day, it's the only show in 12 years of doing that. It's the only show people still come up to him and talk to him about how much fun they had. And they talk about the magic that I did. I did one trick the whole night, and it has become like this mythological story. And he told that to me a few months ago. He came to New York. He's doing other things now. He's like the marketing director for a big tech company, but he still lives in Monroe. And he said people come up to him and ask me about that show more than any other show. And I just think that's cool. Like, I couldn't recognize that was going to be the impact that I had as a kid. But now to look back and go, oh, cool, that's really neat. That, that one trick that I did has permeated that little area.
It started a life of its own.
Yeah. And it was Triple Cast Triumph, by the way, if anybody was curious. It was Triple Cast Triumph.
The only trick you need to start a religion, apparently.
I guess so. If you sell it.
You said it well.
Yeah. But I think it was also accessible too, right? Like the whole experience. The art on the wall wasn't abstract or high concept. They're playing cards. They're cool. They're awesome playing cards, but it's accessible to people. It's not like something that they have difficulty conceptualizing. It's just something done really well and interesting in a way that people aren't used to. So, it wasn't too high concept. It was just, hey, we're all here to have a good time and play cards around the kitchen table. You want to see a magic trick? That feels safe. That feels fun. That feels like worthwhile. That feels like community,
No, that's also
this
the
is
important.
the power of the symbols of the magician, by the way. Sorry, continue.
Did you ever read this book, Finite and Infinite Games by James Cars?
No, what a great title.
It's a great book. So it's talking a lot about these things as well, right? Like it's saying that like finite, the only purpose of a finite game is to win. You need at least two players to play it. One will lose, one will win. And the purpose of an infinite game is to just keep on playing. The purpose is to never end the game and you're doing things to further the game.
By the way.
Sorry?
Are you familiar with the game?
Yes,
Have you
yes,
heard
of course.
Okay, I lost the game.
I'm sorry.
Please
Fuck.
continue. I know.
Haven't we both lost the game, Elliot?
Yeah, talk about an infinite game. I've been playing that game for 20-something years, too. All right, please continue. I'm so sorry to derail you.
No, I've always wondered with that one, if that actually came from this book or not. Or someone's just like, oh, maybe we should make an infinite game. We're going to call it the game.
Yeah. Oh, my gosh, maybe. Wouldn't that be funny? Okay, please continue. So
No,
James Carr's talking about the...
Yeah, so with what you're interested in, I would really recommend you read that book. But the main idea is that like an infinite game, the purpose is to keep on playing. So the rules are sort of fluid in that sense. And whereas with a finite game, you need structured rules because you need to be able to say, I won the game, you lost the game, or the other way around, right? And we
Yeah.
need to both agree to a winner. Whereas with an infinite game, the whole idea is to just keep playing the game. So the playing field needs to keep changing because
Yes.
otherwise the game would stop being played. And I believe Magic in some way is a finite game because we have a trick, right? That's the little finite game within the infinite game of Magic, which is me going, I'm going to show you this. And essentially, I, the magician, win if you, the spectator, get fooled. But that
Which
is
is
not
like
such an.
just the lowest, it's just the lowest like
Yes.
metric for success. Please
No,
continue. I'm
exactly.
sorry.
And it's also that one, like music has the, how do you say, like the boundary that it needs to make sound. Just like dance has the boundary that you need to express yourself with your body, and Magic has the boundary that it needs to create some feeling of, I don't know what he did. But within the bigger finite game, the nice thing is like, I think it's important that you are having it from the point of having fun or experiencing something magical together or being entertained. And that we're making you forget about the finite game, which is me against you, and that we're just using that little finite game to come closer together and play the infinite game of wonder.
Beautiful. I love it. Yeah, that's I think that's a perfect, near as perfect metaphor as you can get. I think that's beautiful, and I think, maybe I should have read that in 2018. But the idea that like magic with a capital M is the infinite game that we're all playing, that the universe is playing with itself, and that like I want to be that kind of magician. I want to be the infinite game magician. And that to me is about removing the frame too, or at least reframing or choosing the frame intentionally. The description of an angel is like all the like ball of fire with all the different eyes and stuff. What is a ball of fire? It is like a consuming bright light. It is something of power and of greatness. What are all the different eyes? They're all the different perspectives. They're all the different frames or lenses or reality tunnels, right? If you can embody multiple perspectives at once and be tied to none of them, then you approximate an angel. You approximate a cosmic being of power, and unfortunately, we have lots of people doing that for bad things, where they don't have any beliefs, they don't have any core principles. They're just trying to win the game, the finite game, but they're using infinite game principles.
Yes.
And I think we need to start fighting fire with fire. And I mean that obviously very symbolically. I'm not suggesting any kind of revolt of violence, but what I am suggesting is that we start consciously participating with consciousness such that consciousness improves and gains awareness and is enlightened, like made lighter, not heavier. Anyway.
It's okay, guys. Elliot just said it's okay to make a Molotov cocktail. Okay, let's go.
Nope. Did not say that. I did not say that. I did not say that, but I didn't say that. You do what you will with the information that you have. That's what I will say. Is I do not take responsibility for anyone's actions. I take responsibility for my own.
You don't take responsibility for anyone's stupidity. Nice.
That's right.
No, but I do agree with that part that you're saying there as well. But I think a big part of that comes down to like magicians being more intentional with what they're doing and being more aware. But this could really be said for any artist, probably.
Right.
Or even any influencer. And it kind of makes me feel like we're in a weird place in the world right now because I'm just meeting people that want to be famous for the sake of being famous without having any actual skills.
I think they think, and I've sort of also fallen into this trap, which is I think they think it'll be easier, right? Being famous seems easy. Seems like you don't have to do anything. Seems like you don't have to do any work and you can just make money being famous. But like, there's such a high cost you might not be laboring with your body, but you are selling your mind and soul. And woof, it's
Yeah,
tough. It's hard.
you're
And if
part
you
of the
can't take
prostitute archetype.
responsibility for it, yeah, exactly. If you can't take responsibility for it, then it becomes, it's evil, evil, you know.
But it's also where a lot of burnout comes from, and midlife crisis is people doing these kind of things and then later on realizing what they have been doing or what has been cast upon them.
Right.
If you have
Yeah.
a dream that's big enough, you don't need a crisis.
Listen, I think that everybody needs a crisis, and I think that a crisis is going to come for you whether you ask it or not. And how you show up in the crisis is who you are, right? Like every hero has his journey, and we're all the hero. It's all, I'm the main character of my story, you're the main character of your story, right? And part of the reckoning that we have to do is that just because we have our own story that we are each individually the hero of, there's not one story. And the true one story is everybody's a player and all the world is a stage, right? And so then it becomes, okay, well, how do we turn this into an ensemble cast? How do we start building community? How do we start working together such that our stories intersect, overlap, and convey greater and more beautiful and more meaningful meaning? Right? How do we make these things empowering rather than selfish or self-serving?
How do we make sure that they enhance each other as opposed to take away?
Yeah. Well, and it is, humans are storytellers. We, as the light of consciousness was the moment of representation. It was storytelling. That is what art is. It is what magic is. And so I think, again, like people wanting to be famous is wanting to have a story to tell. Right. So we are in this interesting space where people want to be famous. They want to have a point of view. They want people to look up to them because they feel like they have something to share. Everybody has a course now. Everybody has a point of view. We all fall into that. I fell into it a little earlier than some with a magic podcast, and now you're following my footsteps, and there are other people doing it too. And I might come back to a podcast. Who knows? But one of the beautiful things is, like, now that we can communicate so broadly and so widely, it's not necessarily about reaching everyone anymore. It's about building your niche, building your community, right? I don't want to reach 10 million people. I want to reach 10,000 people and do that consistently and be in conversation with those people such that we are a coterie of wizards, spell casting for the betterment of mankind. And not necessarily just the loudest person in the room with the biggest opinions and the most activating points of view.
That's a fragile place to be as well. I don't think you can consistently keep that going.
No. And I think also, humility and silence are virtues for a reason. Like the longer you're up there making a fool of yourself, the quicker the end for you is going to come, you know? And so I think it's everything is about balance. We look to nature, we look to the cosmos, we look to any holistic system. Systems thinking is about balance. It is about picking up the slack where it is and letting off some tension where there's tension. And it is about sort of homeostasis, creating balance. And we have to do that together. We can't just do that individually. We have to start individually and create our own balance. But we have to build the multicell organism. We must evolve out of the primordial ooze of isolationism and into something that is more beneficial for the organism called humanity.
And of
And I
course,
want to be a
love,
mitochondria.
and of, and of course, love is a big factor in that as well. Which is also
Amen.
what you were saying before with the magic. It's like you want to create almost like a liminal space because it's possible to have transformation in that space where you just share love and safety with people so that they can enjoy it as hopefully truly themselves in the
Yeah.
best case scenario.
Yeah. And I think, for people who have never experienced love, and I was one of those people, I'm not anymore, but I was. it's very difficult to imagine creating love for a stranger. It's very difficult to imagine holding space for someone when you've never had someone hold space for you. And so, again, there are most people who do card tricks cannot and should not touch the kind of thing that you and I are talking about right now. And that's not to say never. It's just like you have to, you're just not there yet. And it can be a really profoundly burdensome thing to feel like you're supposed to be there and you haven't been. And then there's this imposter thing that comes up because you go, I know what the right answer is, but it doesn't matter. You don't have the experience. You don't have the lived understanding or wisdom to be able to then communicate that to another individual. And so what I would say is live your life, get the experiences. I used to say on my podcast, live a life worth commenting on, having not lived a life, like,
Nice. Nice, Elliot. Nice.
yeah, I'm happy to own up to my shit. Like that's part of life is growing and gaining experience. Wisdom is received, knowledge is gained, but wisdom is received. And so you just have to go and you'll know, people say you'll know. What does that mean? But you do. You'll know.
I remember one of my mentors, like, I don't know if the name rings a bell, Ger Copper. He used to also be really into this kind of stuff.
No, I don't know the name.
Ger was the world champion of magic in 1979, and he became like world champion with like some candle producing act. He produced chandeliers. Super cool, super smart dude, super cool guy. But he used to always say also like, yeah, like I think in the Greek society they would not recommend you to get into this stuff like if you were under 30 or 40. And they were like, if you're under that age, just live your life, be stupid, do whatever you want to do, but don't touch this stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, I think like on my own part of this journey, having turned 30 and everything kind of starting to click in my life, being on this journey, I definitely recognized all the ways that a capitalistic Western society absolutely prevents people from Maslow reaching the self-actualization peak of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. If you want to go the scientific route to explaining all this, but like, we debt trap kids at 18. We, you got to go fight our wars. Like we rob humanity from people at such a young age that like, then we have all of these responsibilities that we're unprepared for emotionally and intellectually. And that prevents us from becoming emotionally and intellectually prepared. And you just have to kind of make it work until, around your 30s, things start to change and you go, oh, okay, wait, hold on a second. This is what my life looks like. Who's going to do something about this? I guess I have to, like, there's not, you have to have lived enough life. So I think, if in our future thing that we build together in our next society, I think that, the Greeks had it right. It's like, you're an adolescent until you're 30. And then at that point, if you're ready, you can become an adult member of society. But until you're 30, like, live your life, make your mistakes. You have no responsibilities, follow your passions and your dreams and mature.
It's also funny because we're like at the complete opposite of that, right? Like yet we're all kids in adult bodies.
Yes.
But at the same time, we have 18-year-old kids saying like, "Oh, you need to do this crypto and that crypto. You need to have a Ferrari when you're 21 and be self-sufficient and have a business, and otherwise you're a failure."
Yeah.
Like the whole myth is changing,
Yeah. Yeah, when in reality, like with technology that we have, it should be like it's unbelievable that we don't have a sustaining and supporting and ecologically sound environment to grow up and live and raise a family and share community with people. It's just, we're missing the forest for the trees.
Yeah, where are the others? That's the other question.
Well, I think because of the very highly paid and very intelligent algorithm builders and social scientists that know that negativity keeps you on platform longer, I think they're out there. I just think that it's so much harder to find that community, which is why we have to be intentional about creating it. And I don't mean an intentional community like a commune, although I don't not mean that. But I, just the idea that we're just conscious of the choices that we make and the impact that we're trying to have, and that it's almost impossible to do it alone, and that we need to try and do it together in order to like have any chance at meaningful success and fulfillment. Who's with me?
Let's go. Start a commune, but where?
Let's do it. Yeah. And that's the other thing is like there's nowhere to escape to anymore. Where are we going? Mars?
No. Some weird island somewhere off the coast.
I know, but like it's got to be uninhabitable. We can't go colonize somebody's land. That's its own form of, evil. It's tough. It's a really tough proposition. Anyway.
So like we spoke about, I'm loving all this conversation, by the way, but to get us back a bit on track.
Yeah. Sorry.
No, dude, please. I'm just here because I want to hear you talk. That's all it is, and it's much better than I could have wished for already. Like much more interesting. Where I am going, like I can finally talk about my weird fucking interests with people, and people don't look at me like I'm a loony. That's nice.
Yes. Oh yeah. I mean, the times are changing. That's for sure.
So, like in some way, we discussed what made you get out of magic and what got you interested to eventually get back, I guess. But what was the trigger for you to return to magic? Is that one very specific thing or more of a general scheme?
It was a succession of specific things, which were that had a lot to do with living life. It had a lot to do with being fed up, letting go, gaining new experience, new perspective, receiving wisdom, and then, I had an experience where I was at a bar and my partner at the time saw me doing magic for people at the bar. And what that looked like was me sitting at the table with a deck of cards on the table, talking to them for 45 minutes and then having someone cut the deck. Right. Like, and my partner said, "You do real magic." And I was like, "What the fuck do you mean real? What are you talking about? What, I don't understand. Please explain to me." Like to have somebody say that to you, oh, that's the goal. That's what I've wanted my whole life. But to not understand what they meant and not have them be able to explain it to you such that you could get it was like, well, now what do I do with that? Right. So then that was the next step in the path of like, well, what does that mean? How does that work? What am I doing and then that eventually led to just general, just like a slowly opening aperture where I was letting more light in and going, okay, well, if magic's real now, what does that even mean? How is that, and then flipping everything on its head and the aperture breaking apart and, the tower card, the moment of having your mind blown, your crown blown off, the idea that, oh, okay. I built my whole experience of reality with an umbrella called conjuring, and all the methods are up here, and everything happens underneath that. When in reality, magic is a capital M, real magic, source, consciousness, universe, real, and conjuring is but a trite metaphor for that, right? Like having that realization was then the next part. And then once you have that realization, you go, oh my God, wow. Okay. Now I have to reassess my entire experience of being alive for the last 30 years. And then, so anyway, that's what it looked like. And then from there it was, okay, well, with this new understanding, how am I gonna write material? What is my material going to look like? And then that's, then you kind of go back to the beginning, which is, well, what are all the things I know how to do? And how do I now try and refigure them and write new presentation, or what's my new approach, or how do I, and a lot of that is just like self-discovery. It's art for the purpose of figuring out what or figuring out how you feel. And so then you're doing that, and you perform for a couple shows, and you go, okay, well, now I understand that. I talk too much. Well, let's figure that, let's cut things down. Let's edit. Okay, if I was talking too much because I was trying to process verbally, which is not fair to do to an audience, by the way, but I'm not a professional, so whatever. uh,
So fuck them.
yeah. I mean, whatever. They had a good time. They got good tricks. The magic was strong. But you learn these little lessons, and you put the reps in, and the reps lead you to greater understanding, and that greater understanding becomes wisdom over time, right? Like it is literally just being aware constantly of the present moment and of the cumulative effect, and keeping your awareness on those two things such that you start to recognize how they influence each other, right? So like, one of the things that I like to say to people that gets their hackles up is I go, I'm a wizard and I'm gifted with sight. And they go, what? I'm like, hindsight, insight, foresight, sight, right? It's a feedback loop. So you have hindsight, and that provides insight because you go, oh, okay, I know what I did there, and that was hindsight's 2020, and I know that. And the insight gives you foresight into what you're going to do next, and then foresight prepares you for the thing, and then the thing happens, and then you have hindsight about the thing, and then you have new insight. And so it's a feedback loop of sight. And so if you get really good at that feedback loop over time, then you are developing your wizard skill of sight and being a seer, right? And then you get good enough at reckoning the patterns in yourself that you can start recognizing the patterns in other people. And you can even start recognizing the pattern just from one thing. You don't even have to see the rest of their life. You can go, I know that that's who you are, and that that's your pattern, and now I know how to help you break that pattern, right? So for me, like my mom is a Bible study teacher, and so I love talking to her because also part of like, this is outside of magic, but it's also capital M magic, which is that I have not a good relationship with my mom. My mom is like, I had to reparent myself, and then I reparented my mom, which, you should not have to do, but if you can, you should, because man, does it make a difference. And now we have this beautiful sort of collaborative relationship where I can speak to her in her words. I can talk about the Bible. I can talk about Jesus. I can talk about Daniel and Moses and whatever, because I'm not afraid of it, because I know it's all metaphor. But I also know it from all these different perspectives, and so I can communicate it in a way with her such that I can provide my own insight that increases her insight, and then she can provide her insight that, oh, well, that makes me think about this in a new way or whatever. And so, like, I like to speak in these wizarding terms to my mom because I think it helps her recognize that it is a lot more fluid than just like a fundamental approach to a text. Like, what does it mean to be a living word? It means that it is alive and it is fluid, and that it is metaphor that can be applied in the present moment. It's alive right now. What does that mean? It means you can do stuff with it. Anyway. So, again, I don't believe anything that I'm saying. Belief is a tool. Choose to believe what you need to believe in order to get the result that you want, which, can look like white magic or black magic. What does that mean, right? It's all just metaphor. It's all just symbol. Anyway, I got sidetracked again.
Please keep getting sidetracked as much as you want.
I just, I spent the time getting out of magic, learning all the things that got me, that learning all the lessons or having all the thoughts that I would have liked to have had to keep me from the burnout, but I had to have the burnout to get to the thoughts. So like, I'm grateful for the burnout now because it got me where I am. And
I can imagine also for your ego that must have been quite a big experience, right? Because like of course, like we just met today and we talked a little bit earlier before, but I can imagine like if I just use you as a mirror to reflect on myself, like magic having been a really big part of your life
for like something that you're constantly busy with until that moment of burnout. So to then just say like bye, it must have been like a huge shift for you.
Yeah, it was enormous. And it was very freeing because it felt like, it was like, okay, last show at the Magic Castle, next day start working at Suit Supply. Literally, it was the next day I started working at Suit Supply. So it felt like I had the weight of the world on my shoulders, and then I just sloughed it off and went to a retail job, which it was all self-imposed. That was all my illusion of grandeur. But I was still who I was. I was still a magician. I was still going in being a magician. I was still going in with all the skills and tools and tricks and whatever. And so now I was just performing for people who thought they were buying a suit, but they were instead getting a show called Buying a Suit. And so like the big trip for my ego really came at like much later, really, because it to me it was just I just switched venue. I just changed venues. I went from being close up to stand up, or close up to parlor, but my parlor was the Suit Supply store. Um, and I don't mean I was like doing tricks at Suit Supply. I just meant like the performance of the selling ceremony was like, I know how the show's gonna go, and when you walk in within 3 minutes, I know what you're walking out with, and now I just have to get you to that point. That's what a good show is. I know what you're going to leave with, and I know how to get us there, right? So that way, to me, the like, I just learned how to get good at putting on a show and being a host. And as much as my manager at the store at the time was like kind of a hot mess, one of the things that he was really, really so good about was the second somebody enters the door, you greet them. And you don't have to like walk up and shake their hand, but when they walk in, hello, welcome. No one comes into the store without being greeted. And if you don't approach them within a few moments just to check in, see if they need help, like then they're just walking out. Because we're all busy. If they don't get help, they're walking out. Okay. And that really helped me sort of take responsibility very quickly for people's experience. It was like I got permission to take over somebody's, when you walk in here, you're in my house kind of situation. And that was so hugely powerful because, like, as a magician, okay, if I tell somebody I'm doing a magic trick and then I ask them to stand on the table, they'll probably get on the table. But that kind of approach, people say hello immediately, it sort of empowered me to think that way, not in the context of I'm doing a magic trick, but it's like if you just if people know that they're in your space and they feel like comfortable with that dynamic, you can ask them to do anything and they'll do it. And that is about safety, right?
You're curating their experience in some way.
Yeah, I'm curating their experience, but not only curating their experience, I'm enrolling them in participation for their benefit, which is what a good magic trick does. A bad magic trick turns a person into a prop. A good magic trick makes the magic happen in their mind because you are encouraging and sometimes strong arming them into participating actively with what's happening. And so in a selling ceremony, it's a little easier because you can just ask very gentle questions like, oh, what time of day are you getting married? What's your venue look like? What's your photographer's aesthetic? How many people are going to be there? Is it daytime, nighttime? Is it formal or casual? Blah, blah, blah. You can ask these sort of gentle questions instead of being like, tell me what your mother's maiden name was and I'll tell you about your future. It's like none of that stupid. It's just like, hey, we're getting related,
Yeah.
But it's all like there's one thing happening, which is it's between you and me right now. And then whatever words are just like the set dressing for the experience I'm building. Right? So what's the experience we're trying to have here? And I can guarantee that I'm going to try to be in charge of that experience. And the second that I feel pushback, I let go. I'm not strong. I don't want this. Consent is important to me. We need to agree that we're trying to collaborate toward mutual joy. And if that's not what we're doing, that's fine. One of the notes that I have written down in my many notebooks that kind of comes back to me a lot is we can be done when one of us is happy. We can succeed when both of us are happy. You know? And so like,
I like that. Yeah.
yeah. So that's sort of the way that I try and have my interactions is like, if I'm not going to be the one that's happy, then let's get it done. I don't need to be happy. Let's just move on. And, you know, I can be in charge of my own experience. But I would like for us to succeed by mutual collaboration toward joy where we're both getting a result that we enjoy.
But that also like relates to you saying if you ask them to get on the table, they will do it, right? Because they're feeling safe with you. They're feeling loved, if you want to call it like that. So they sort of have the feeling like if I'm going to do this, I'm not going to be made to the fool of, but we're going to
Yes.
do something that makes all of us better.
Yes. This will be worth it. The imagined embarrassment is outweighed by the promise of the reward. And therefore it is worth it for me to get on the table. Yeah.
And in that regard, you don't necessarily need someone that's super open to new experiences, right? Like as long as they're feeling safe and secure and they are like, oh, this is going to be worth my time. It's going to be fun or whatever. Like at the end of the day, I was talking with Mike Vincent about this in Vienna last week, and he was like, people just want to be seen. And I think the most beautiful thing there was he was doing his parlor show and he was going to get some people to go on stage. And Mike lost his hearing like 5 years ago, which for him was a big shift. Like he had to relearn how to look at the whole world because what he literally had was he could hear perfectly one day and then he woke up the next day gone. Just all his hearing just. And he learned how to handle it. And if you see him perform, you wouldn't even imagine that he can't hear stuff because he just responds to you like instantly. You ask a question and it's just bomb, gets back at you. And the beautiful thing was he got this man to come on stage and this man didn't really want to because he was like pointing at his ear like, I can't hear, I have trouble hearing. And Mike was like, yeah, me too. Please come join us. And after a bit of hesitation, the guy went there and Mike created this experience for everybody where everybody was winning and rejoicing in magic. And this man, literally like old German dude, just stood up and gave him like a hug, like very unlike, for a German person, it's more like close stuff to do. And he was just so happy he came there. He was like, thank you for making me be seen and making me realize it's okay to be like this, that what I'm going through, it shouldn't be a source of shame.
Yeah. I used a couple of words there that really resonated with me. Rejoicing in magic. Right? Like, because coming from a Southern Baptist fundamentalist Christian background, the word rejoicing is like very loaded. And so to hear you say rejoicing in magic is just so beautiful. And that's such an incredible experience. And to hear that, like, that's what it's about. That's what going to church is supposed to be, It is this experience that we create together of being seen and loved. God,
Yes.
how beautiful is that? Wow. Amazing. I love that.
I do have the feeling like that would be the perfect way to end the podcast now.
Okay, great. Well, I loved
Awesome.
it. Thank you so much.
Dudes, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, likewise. This was a lot of fun. Thank you for allowing me a soapbox. And thanks for listening to Magical Thinking. I appreciate that. I'm always happy to hear that the work, made a difference. That's what we're going for, right? We want to make a difference. So thank you. I appreciate it.
It's like I was saying before, like it just feels like a casual conversation between friends every time. And I do sense a bit that people do give more interesting answers because they're just like chilling there and just, they're not trying to be profound because they're just like saying shit. And within that not trying to be profound, there's a lot of profoundness to be found, ironically.
Well, I think we talk about wonder as a reaction or as an experience, but like you also sometimes just have to sit and wonder about stuff. And I think I was allowing for that kind of wonder as opposed to the like awe version of wonder. Like, oh, I wonder how he did that. And it's more like, I wonder how I feel. Like using wonder as an active verb of participation instead of just the wow, the awe aspect of it.
I wonder what would happen if A and B do rain.
Yeah. That's what I think. That's the kind of wonder that I was trying to cultivate is like, what everybody has a canned answer for any question you're going to ask them. But if you just wait after the canned answer's over, then they might start saying stuff they haven't said before, So I think that's nice. That form of wonder was fun to cultivate. So I appreciate you saying that. Thank you.
Thank you so much for being here, dude. And hopefully again in the future.
Yeah, why not? Sounds good.
We'll see. Okay.